My father unscrewed my prosthetic leg and drove away. When I refused to use it to smuggle his substances through airport security, he'd say, "This leg is mine, you're just borrowing it," and lock me in the attic without it. What's the most twisted thing your family used against you? When I was 12 years old, my father unscrewed my prosthetic leg in the middle of nowhere and drove away because I'd refused to use it to carry his substances through airport security. I'd lost my leg in the accident that culled my mother when I was 8. Dad had been driving under the influence, but he walked away without a scratch while my mother lost her life, and I woke up missing everything below my left knee. He played the grieving widower perfectly, the devoted father caring for his disabled son. What they didn't see was that from that day on, my ability to walk completely depended on whether he thought I'd deserved it. At first, he'd take my leg away for an hour or two if I talked back to him. Once he unscrewed it and hid it for a whole day after I failed a test. But once he discovered substance smuggling, he took everything up a notch. Dad worked airport maintenance and discovered which cargo areas had broken cameras. He figured out he could stuff packages in my prosthetic's hollow compartments, knowing security never thoroughly checked a child's medical device. Who suspects a limping 12-year-old? As I got older and the prosthetic got bigger, so did the packages. Dad upgraded me to a more advanced leg with larger hollow spaces, telling doctors I needed maximum comfort. Really, he needed maximum storage. He'd wake me at 3 a.m. for airport runs, unscrew my leg while I sat in the car, pack it full, then reattach it. "Remember," he'd say, "this leg is mine. You're just borrowing it." I started sleeping in the prosthetic, terrified he'd take it while I slept, but he had none of that. He'd force me to remove it each night, holding it just out of reach while I sat on my bed, making me promise to be good before giving it back. Sometimes he'd pretend to forget where he put it, leave me crawling around the house searching. As I got older, I started refusing more often, especially after seeing a news report about a teenager caught smuggling who got 15 years. Dad's response was always to take the leg for a few hours, leave me trapped. I started hiding crutches around the house so I had a way to get around after he took my leg. That made him furious. He found and threw away every pair, then moved my bedroom to the attic where the steep stairs were impossible to navigate without 2 legs. One day he demanded I fly to Miami alone with the biggest package yet. I told him no and refused to get out of the car. Without a word, he drove the car somewhere completely remote, opened the door, and started unscrewing my prosthetic. I fought him, but he was stronger. He pulled it off, threw it in the trunk, and drove away. I spent 3 hours hopping between cars, soaking wet, before someone found me and called the police. Dad arrived playing the concerned parent. He told them I'd thrown a tantrum, removed my own leg for attention. The officers lectured me about appreciating my father while he stood behind them, my leg under his arm. In the car, he spelled out the rules. Any defiance meant losing the leg. Any mention of substances meant losing it permanently. But I'd made a decision that day. I wasn't going to rely on him for my mobility anymore. I started building my own leg from YouTube tutorials, stealing supplies from hardware stores. It was ugly, heavy, painful to wear, but it was mine. I hid it in pieces around the house, assembling it only when Dad was at work. The homemade leg could only handle a few hours before the pain became unbearable, but a few hours might be enough. Dad noticed me moving differently and started spot-checking my prosthetic at random, making me remove it so he could inspect the compartments. He installed cameras in my room, but he never found my makeshift leg because he couldn't imagine I'd be smart enough to build one. The next time Dad announced a smuggling mission, I pretended to be obedient, but the night before, I executed my plan. Dad had hidden my good leg as usual, but my homemade one was ready to go. I put on my homemade leg and left through my window. I made it 5 blocks before Dad found me. He'd woken up in the middle of the night and decided to check my room cameras, and on my homemade leg, I was no match for him in speed. He dragged me home and locked me in the attic, taking my makeshift left away. "You think you're clever," he said. "Let's see how you like a few days without food." I was completely trapped, no way of contacting anyone, stuck behind a trap door and stairs I couldn't descend. And the way Dad drank, I knew there was a good chance he'd forget to let me out once he cooled down. How long would it take him to remember that his son was up here with no legs, no food, and no water? The temperature was already climbing, and I knew I wouldn't survive up here unless I figured out a way out. I dragged myself across the dusty floorboards, searching for anything I could use. The attic stretched maybe 20 feet by 15, filled with boxes of Christmas decorations and old photo albums Mom would have hated seeing covered in cobwebs. My hands found a broken coat hanger wedged behind a stack of plastic bins. Not much, but maybe enough. The trap door had a simple latch mechanism on the outside. I bent the coat hanger into a hook and slid it through the crack, fishing blindly for the latch. My fingers cramped from the awkward angle. Sweat dripped into my eyes. After an hour of trying, the hanger slipped from my grip and clattered down the stairs. I pressed my ear to the floor. Dad's snoring drifted up from his bedroom below. At least he hadn't heard. But now my only tool was gone, and the morning sun was already turning the attic into an oven. I examined every inch of my prison. Behind Mom's old sewing machine, I discovered a small ventilation grate. Too small to crawl through, but it overlooked the driveway. If someone came to the house, maybe I could get their attention. I tried shouting through it once, but Dad's truck was the only vehicle parked outside. By noon, dehydration was making me dizzy. I found an old coffee can and positioned it under a leak in the roof, hoping for rain that never came. My throat felt like sandpaper. The homemade prosthetic had left raw spots on my stump that throbbed with each movement. I dozed fitfully through the afternoon heat. When I woke, shadows were lengthening across the floor. Dad's truck was gone. He'd left without checking on me. The realization hit hard. He really might forget I was up here. Desperation drove me to try the trap door again. This time I used a Christmas ornament hook, but it was too flimsy and bent immediately. I pounded on the door until my fists were bruised, knowing it was pointless. The solid wood barely made a sound. Night fell. The attic turned cold. I wrapped myself in musty curtains from a box, shivering as the temperature dropped. My stomach had stopped growling hours ago, replaced by by a hollow ache, but worse than hunger was the thirst. My lips were cracked, my tongue swollen. I must have passed out because suddenly daylight was streaming through the grate. No sound from below. Dad's truck still wasn't in the driveway. Had he gone on the smuggling run without me? Left me here to teach me a lesson? I crawled back to the boxes, searching more carefully. Inside Mom's sewing kit, I found scissors. Not strong enough to cut through the trap door, but maybe. I looked at the roof. Old houses like ours had thin insulation and aging wood. If I could cut through the insulation, maybe I could kick through the roof tiles. I started cutting. The scissors were dull, and the work was exhausting. Fiberglass insulation made my hands itch terribly, but after hours of work, I'd cleared a small section down to the wood. I positioned myself and kicked upward with my good leg. The wood creaked but held firm. That's when I heard Dad's truck pull into the driveway. My heart hammered as his footsteps climbed the stairs. The trapdoor opened, and his bloodshot eyes found me surrounded by scattered insulation. He climbed into the attic, surprisingly steady for someone who'd clearly been drinking. He surveyed the damage, then grabbed my ankle and dragged me toward the opening. I clutched at floorboards, but he was too strong. He hauled me down the stairs, my back hitting each step. In my bedroom, he threw me onto the bed and started pulling out dresser drawers, tossing my clothes into garbage bags. "You want to destroy my house? You can live somewhere else." He stripped the room bare, even taking my school books. He dragged me back to the attic and dumped the garbage bags in the corner. "This is your room now. No more privileges." He'd brought up a bucket and a jug of water. "This should last you 3 days. By then, maybe you'll remember who owns this house." The trapdoor slammed shut. This time, I heard a padlock click into place. 3 days. I rationed the water carefully, allowing myself only small sips. The bucket was humiliating but necessary. I continued working on the roof when I had energy, but progress was slow. The scissors broke on the second day. On the third morning, I heard voices downstairs. Dad talking to someone. I pressed against the grate, trying to see who it was. A delivery truck was parked outside. The mailman, maybe? I tried calling out, but my voice was too hoarse to carry. Dad came up that evening with more water and a loaf of bread. He checked my work on the roof and laughed. "You really thought you could break out?" He kicked a pile of insulation. "Try anything like that again, and it'll be a week up here." He left the padlock on. Days blurred together. Dad brought supplies every few days, just enough to keep me alive. I stopped trying to escape and focused on surviving, but I watched through the grate, memorizing his routines. He left for work at 7 a.m., came home by 4 p.m. unless he went to the bar. Wednesdays, he grocery shopped. Sundays, he slept until noon. I wonder what's really going through this dad's mind when he locks his own kid in an attic. Something about the way he acts so calm while doing these awful things makes me curious about what broke inside him after that accident. After 2 weeks, he finally let me come down for a few hours. My good prosthetic was nowhere to be found. I had to crawl to the bathroom, crawl to the kitchen. He watched me struggle with satisfaction. "Ready to behave?" he asked. I nodded, defeated. At least that's what I wanted him to think. He started letting me down for longer periods, but always when he was home to watch me. I used the time to search for my prosthetic, but he'd hidden it well. I also looked for phones, but he'd removed them all. Even the landline was gone. One evening while cooking dinner, I noticed him favoring his right side. He'd pulled something at work, he said. I watched him pop painkillers with his beer, saw how the combination made him drowsier than usual. That night, he forgot to lock me in the attic. I waited until his snoring was steady, then crawled to his room. His keys were on the nightstand. I took them silently and made my way to the garage. My prosthetic was in his truck, wrapped in a garbage bag. I strapped it on, nearly crying from relief, but I couldn't run yet. He'd wake up, find me gone, and hunt me down again. I needed a better plan. I returned the keys and crawled back to my room. Let him think I hadn't noticed his mistake. Over the next days, I prepared. I stashed water bottles and granola bars from the pantry, found an old prepaid phone in the garage and charged it secretly, located spare cash in his jacket pockets. Not much, but maybe enough for a bus ticket. I waited for the perfect opportunity. It came on a Wednesday. Dad called in sick to work, but I could tell he was planning something. He kept checking his phone, pacing nervously. Around noon, he told me he had to go out. "Don't even think about leaving," he warned. "I'll know." But he made a crucial mistake. In his distraction, he left his truck keys on the kitchen counter. As soon as he left, I grabbed my hidden supplies and the keys. I couldn't take his truck, too easy to track. But 3 blocks away was a bus stop. I'd memorized the schedule from watching through the attic grate. I made it to the stop with minutes to spare. When the bus arrived, I climbed on, my hands shaking as I paid the fare. The driver barely glanced at me. As we pulled away, I saw Dad's truck speeding toward the house. He'd realized something was wrong, but it was too late. I was already gone. The bus took me downtown. From there, I caught another to the next county. I'd researched homeless shelters on the prepaid phone, found one that didn't ask too many questions. It wasn't much, but it was a start. That night, lying on a thin cot surrounded by strangers, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Freedom. Dad couldn't take my leg anymore, couldn't lock me in the attic, couldn't control me. I knew he'd look for me, knew I'd have to be careful, stay hidden, but I also knew something else. I'd survived his worst and escaped. Whatever came next, I could handle it. The shelter had job placement programs, education assistants, people who actually wanted to help. It would be hard, starting over with nothing, but nothing was better than that attic, better than being his substance mule. I fell asleep planning my next moves. New name, new city, new life, one where I walked on my own terms, with a leg no one could ever take away again. The shelter's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as I filled out intake forms with a borrowed pen. My hand trembled, making the letters shaky. The social worker, a tired woman with kind eyes, processed my paperwork without asking too many questions. She assigned me a bed number and pointed toward the men's dormitory. I spent that first week learning the shelter's rhythms. Breakfast at 6, mandatory job search from 9 to noon, lunch, then free time until dinner. Most residents kept to themselves, which suited me fine. I used the computer lab to create a new email address and apply for jobs that didn't require much walking. On my 8th day, during evening meal prep, I spotted a familiar truck cruising past the shelter's windows. My blood froze. Dad's vehicle moved slowly, like he was searching. I ducked behind a pillar, watching until the truck disappeared around the corner. He'd tracked me somehow. Maybe security cameras at the bus station, or someone had recognized me. That night, I barely slept. Every footstep in the hallway made me tense. By morning, I'd decided to leave. The shelter had given me a week's reprieve, but staying meant risking capture. I packed my few belongings and slipped out during the breakfast rush. The next town over had a youth hostel that accepted walk-ins. I gave them a fake name and paid for 3 nights with my dwindling cash. The shared bathroom had a lock, and my bunk bed sat in a corner where I could watch the door. Better than the shelter's open dormitory. I found day labor at a warehouse, loading boxes for cash under the table. The work aggravated my stump, but I needed money. After my shift, I'd ice the swelling and count my earnings. $40 here, $60 there, slowly building enough for a real escape. 2 weeks into my warehouse job, I came back to find my bunk tossed. Someone had gone through my things. Nothing stolen, but everything felt wrong. The hostel manager claimed ignorance when I complained. That night, I noticed a car idling outside with its engine running. Not Dad's truck, but something felt off. I left through the back exit, abandoning most of my possessions. Only took what fit in my backpack. The car followed me for 3 blocks before I ducked into an all-night diner. I nursed coffee for hours, watching the parking lot. The car never reappeared, but my nerves were shot. Sleeping rough meant finding safe spots. Under bridges attracted too much attention from police. Abandoned buildings had other dangers. I settled on a storage unit facility with a broken fence. The security guard did rounds at predictable times, easy to avoid. I made a nest behind some units using cardboard and a tarp. My prosthetic started showing wear from constant use. The socket cracked where it met the pylon, making each step painful. I reinforced it with duct tape, but knew it wouldn't last. Without proper maintenance, I'd lose mobility again. The fear of that kept me awake most nights. I took a risk and called the shelter from a payphone, asking if anyone had come looking for me. The receptionist hesitated before admitting a man claiming to be my father had visited several times. He'd shown my photo around, offered money for information. She warned me to be careful and hung up. Moving constantly became my survival strategy. Never more than a few nights in one place. I found work where I could. Dishwashing, cleaning offices after hours, anything that paid cash. My prosthetic deteriorated daily, forcing me to wrap more tape around the cracks. One evening while washing dishes at a grimy restaurant, the owner mentioned his brother ran a prosthetics repair shop. My heart raced at the possibility. I worked extra shifts, saved every penny, and finally had enough for basic repairs. The shop was across town, a risk worth taking. The technician examined my leg without asking questions about its condition. He replaced the cracked socket and reinforced the pylon, warning it was a temporary fix. I paid in crumpled bills and left quickly, relief flooding through me at each painless step. That relief lasted exactly 1 day. I returned to my current squat, an abandoned retail space, to find Dad's truck parked outside. He sat in the driver's seat, watching the entrance. I backed away slowly, but he must have caught movement in his mirror. The door opened. I ran. Despite the repaired prosthetic, I couldn't match his speed. He gained ground quickly, his footsteps pounding behind me. I darted between buildings, through a park, across busy streets. My breath came in gasps, legs burning. He stayed close, relentless. A chain-link fence blocked my path. I started climbing, but he grabbed my prosthetic and yanked. The leg came free, sending me tumbling to the pavement. He stood over me, holding my mobility hostage once again. His face showed no emotion, just cold determination. He dragged me to his truck and threw me in the back. Cable ties secured my wrists to the door handle. We drove in silence for hours, leaving the city behind. I tested the restraints, but they held firm. Outside, familiar landmarks appeared. He was taking me home. The house looked exactly the same. He carried me inside, dumping me on the living room floor. The attic trap door hung open like a threat. He retrieved tools from the garage and began installing new locks, reinforced hinges, a steel plate over the opening. My prison was being upgraded. He worked methodically, ignoring my presence. When finished, he hauled me upstairs. The attic had changed. Steel mesh covered the ventilation grate. The roof showed fresh repairs where I'd tried breaking through. A chemical toilet sat in one corner, cases of water bottles in another. He'd prepared for a long imprisonment. The trap door slammed shut with finality. Multiple locks clicked into place. Through the mesh-covered grate, I watched him padlock a chain around the exterior. Even if I somehow picked the locks from inside, the chain would hold. He'd learned from my previous attempts. Days passed in that reinforced prison. He brought food twice daily, never speaking. I studied every inch of my upgraded cage, looking for weaknesses. The steel mesh was welded professionally. The roof repairs included metal sheeting under new tiles. Even the walls had been reinforced with plywood. Isolation gnawed at my sanity. No books, no distractions, just endless hours alone with my thoughts. I exercised to maintain strength, doing push-ups and core work. Without my prosthetic, lower body exercises were limited. I had to stay ready for any opportunity. Dad's routine became predictable again. Morning delivery at 7, evening at 6. He'd unlock the trap door, set down supplies, and leave without entering. Talk about taking grounded to a whole new level. This dad just turned the attic into maximum security prison while his kids watching from the floor like it's some twisted home improvement show. Always careful, never giving me an opening. But I noticed something. He'd started drinking heavily again. His movements grew sloppier, timing less precise. One morning he stumbled while climbing the stairs, nearly dropping the water bottles. His hands shook as he worked the locks. The smell of alcohol wafted through the opening. His addiction was escalating, making him vulnerable. I just had to wait for the right moment. That moment came sooner than expected. He arrived for evening delivery clearly intoxicated, fumbling with keys. The trap door swung open, and he started down the stairs instead of just setting supplies at the top. His balance wavered on the third step. I moved fast, grabbing his ankle as he passed. He tumbled forward, crashing into boxes. His head struck Mom's old sewing machine with a dull thud. He lay still, breathing, but unconscious. My hands searched his pockets, finding keys, phone, and wallet. Freedom. freedom was within reach, but I couldn't climb those stairs. Without my prosthetic, the steep angle was impossible. I tried pulling myself up using arm strength alone, but kept sliding back. Dad groaned, starting to stir. Panic flooded through me. If he woke fully, my chance would vanish. I dragged myself to his unconscious form and used his belt to secure his hands. His phone had no password. Typical dad carelessness. I scrolled through contacts, looking for anyone who might help. Most names were drinking buddies or work colleagues. Then I found Benji, repair shop, the prosthetics technician who'd fixed my leg. Worth a shot. I typed quickly, explaining I was trapped and needed help. Added the address and hit send. Then I dialed 911, but hesitated. Police meant questions, investigations, foster care. I needed a different plan. Dad's eyes fluttered open as I searched for options. He tested the belt binding his wrists, then looked at me with pure rage. He started yelling threats, promises of punishment that made my stomach turn. I grabbed a roll of duct tape from a box and covered his mouth, reducing his shouts to muffled growls. Hours passed. No response from Benji. Dad worked steadily at his restraints, the belt loosening with each movement. I reinforced it with tape, but knew it wouldn't hold forever. My prosthetic lay somewhere in the house, unreachable. Without it, I remained trapped even with him bound. Around midnight, Dad freed one hand. I tried to stop him, but he was stronger, even hammered. We struggled among the boxes until he pinned me down, his weight crushing. His free hand reached for my throat. I grabbed Mom's scissors from the sewing kit and stabbed wildly. The blade caught his shoulder, making him recoil. Blood seeped through his shirt as he retreated to the far wall. We stared at each other, both breathing hard. The scissors remained in my grip, my only defense. He pressed his hand to the wound, wincing. Neither of us moved for long minutes. His phone buzzed. A text from Benji asking if everything was okay. I typed back with shaking fingers, begging him to come immediately. Dad watched me, calculating his next move. The blood loss and alcohol made him unsteady, but desperation gave him strength. He lunged again. I slashed with the scissors, opening a gash on his arm. He howled and stumbled back. More blood, more pain, but still he came. We fought among Mom's abandoned belongings, destroying boxes of memories. I kept the scissors between us, the only thing preventing him from overpowering me. Car headlights swept across the grate. Someone had arrived. I screamed for help, hoping they'd hear. Dad tried to cover my mouth, earning another cut from the scissors. Footsteps on the stairs below, then pounding on the front door. Benji's voice called out, asking if anyone was home. Dad made a choice. He scrambled up the attic stairs, slamming the trap door behind him. I heard locks clicking, the chain rattling. He'd sealed me in again, but now he was injured, and someone knew I was here. The situation had shifted. Through the grate, I watched Dad exit the house and approach Benji's van. They talked briefly, Dad gesturing wildly. Even from distance, I could see blood staining his clothes. Benji backed away, clearly alarmed. Dad grabbed him, trying to prevent his leaving. Benji broke free and ran to his van. Dad pursued, but stumbled, his injuries slowing him. The van peeled out, leaving Dad standing in the driveway. He turned back toward the house, his expression murderous. I gripped the scissors tighter. The trap door locks rattled as he returned. His breathing sounded labored, pained. He gave up on the locks and stomped away. Through the grate, I saw him enter the garage. He emerged carrying boards, nails, a hammer. He meant to seal the trap door permanently. Hammering echoed through the house as he worked. Each nail drove home my fate if Benji didn't return with help. I pressed against the grate, screaming until my voice went hoarse. Neighbors had to hear something, but no one came. The hammering stopped. Dad's truck engine started. He was leaving, probably to find medical attention for his wounds, or to hunt down Benji before he could alert authorities. Either way, I remained trapped in an even more secure prison. I used the scissors to attack the fresh repairs, but the metal sheeting defeated my efforts. The steel mesh over the grate wouldn't budge. The reinforced walls might as well have been concrete. Every upgrade he'd made served its purpose perfectly. Time crawled by. No sounds from below. Had Benji gone to police? Would they believe his story? Dad was good at talking his way out of trouble, spinning tales that made others look crazy. He'd done it before when I'd tried getting help. My water supply ran low. The chemical toilet reeked in the confined space. Without food delivery, hunger gnawed constantly. I rationed everything, unsure how long this standoff would last. The scissors remained close, my only comfort. On the second day of isolation, I heard vehicles outside, multiple engines, doors slamming, voices. Through the grate, I saw police cars and an ambulance. Hope surged through me. Benji had come through. Help had finally arrived, but Dad's truck pulled up behind them. He climbed out, arm in a sling, playing the victim perfectly. I watched him gesture toward the house, probably spinning some story about a troubled son who'd attacked him. The officers listened, nodding sympathetically. I screamed through the grate, begging them to check the attic. My voice was too weak to carry far. Dad led them inside, no doubt showing them the blood, the damage, painting me as dangerous. I heard footsteps below, but no one climbed to the attic. The vehicles left one by one. Dad remained, watching them go. He looked up at the grate and smiled. He'd won again, turned my hope into crushing defeat. The trap door would stay sealed until he decided otherwise. That night, I made a desperate choice. Using the scissors, I began cutting into my own arm, not to die, but to create evidence they couldn't ignore. Blood dripped onto fabric I'd torn from Mom's curtains. I wrote messages, pleas for help, accusations against Dad. I folded the bloody fabric into small squares and forced them through gaps in the grate mesh. They fluttered down like crimson snow, landing on the driveway below. If anyone visited, they'd see them. Questions would be asked that Dad couldn't deflect. The cutting left me weak, dizzy. I wrapped my arm with more curtain fabric, applying pressure to slow the bleeding. Infection was a real risk, but I had no choice. This evidence might be my only chance at rescue. Morning brought no food delivery. Dad's truck remained parked outside. Through the grate, I saw him collecting the bloody messages, his face dark with anger. He'd have to explain them somehow if anyone noticed. The blood was real, undeniable. He entered the house and climbed toward the attic. The reinforced trap door creaked as he tested it. He'd nailed it shut from outside, trapping himself from easy access too. I heard him cursing, considering options. options. Finally, his footsteps retreated. Power tools whined as he worked to remove his own fortifications. The nails screeched free one by one. He'd made the prison too secure, even for himself. I gripped the scissors, ready for whatever came next. The trap door finally opened. Dad descended slowly, favoring his injured shoulder. His eyes found the blood on my arm, the stained fabric. He shook his head, almost admiring my desperation. We faced each other in the dim light, both wounded, both determined. He pulled out his phone and showed me the screen. Messages from concerned neighbors asking about the blood they'd seen. Benji had also contacted others, spreading word about my situation. The walls were closing in on Dad's story. He made an offer. Leave now, together. He'd take me far away where no one would ask questions. Start fresh in a new state. All I had to do was play along. Tell anyone who asked that I'd run away and he'd found me. Simple. I refused. He expected that. What he didn't expect was for me to grab his phone and smash it against the floor. Without it, he couldn't coordinate stories or track what others were saying. His control slipped further. We struggled for the broken phone. In the chaos, I managed to grab his keys. He tackled me, trying to pry them from my grip. We rolled across the attic floor, each fighting for advantage. The scissors stayed in my other hand, ready. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Someone had finally taken the blood evidence seriously. Dad heard them too, his movements becoming frantic. He needed to get us both out before they arrived, maintain his narrative of concerned father. I made myself dead weight, refusing to cooperate. He tried dragging me toward the stairs, but I grabbed onto anything within reach. Boxes toppled, their contents spilling. Mom's photo album scattered, her smiling face watching our desperate battle. Strange how he's suddenly making all these sloppy mistakes after being so careful before. The drinking, the no phone password, even coming down the stairs when drunk. Something feels different about his behavior now, like maybe he's dealing with more than just keeping his son locked up. The sirens stopped outside our house. Car doors slammed. Voices called out, identifying themselves as police. Dad abandoned trying to move me and rushed to the stairs. He had seconds to craft whatever story might save him. I followed as fast as I could, dragging myself with pure adrenaline. The stairs were still impossible, but I positioned myself where they'd see me when they entered. My bloodied arm, the makeshift bandages, the scissors still clutched defensively. Let them draw their own conclusions. Dad met the officers at the front door, immediately launching into explanations. His son had mental health issues, self-harm tendencies, violent episodes. He'd been trying to get me help, but I kept running away. The attic was for my own safety. But Benji had done more than just call police. He'd contacted social services, shared his concerns widely. Multiple reports had come in about the bloody messages, my imprisonment. Too many threads for Dad to weave into his usual lies. An officer climbed to the attic while others questioned Dad below. She saw me at the top of the stairs, took in the reinforced prison, the evidence of long-term captivity. Her radio crackled as she called for backup and medical assistance. Paramedics arrived to treat my wounds and dehydration. They carried me down those impossible stairs on a stretcher. Dad watched from the living room, handcuffed now, his story falling apart. The officers had found my prosthetic in his truck, still wrapped in the garbage bag. At the hospital, doctors cleaned and stitched my self-inflicted cuts. Social workers asked gentle questions about my situation. I told them everything: the substance smuggling, the abuse, the imprisonment. They documented each detail, building a case. A detective visited with photos from the house, the reinforced attic, the blood evidence, Dad's own injuries from our fight. She assured me he wouldn't hurt me again. The charges were serious: child endangerment, false imprisonment, substance trafficking. But I still had no leg. The prosthetic was evidence now, locked away until after trial. The hospital provided crutches, but I'd grown too dependent on artificial mobility. Physical therapy helped, but progress was slow. Benji visited once I'd stabilized. He'd felt something was wrong when I'd texted, remembered fixing my leg and wondering about its condition. His persistence had saved me. He offered to help get me a new prosthetic once everything settled. Foster care loomed as my next challenge. No relatives stepped forward to claim me. The group home they assigned me to had strict rules, set schedules, better than Dad's prison, but still confining. I focused on healing and planning my next moves. The trial took months to begin. I testified via video link, unable to face Dad directly. His lawyer tried painting me as disturbed, self-destructive, but the physical evidence was overwhelming. The reinforced attic spoke louder than any of his lies. He got 15 years, same sentence that teenager in the news had received for smuggling. Ironic justice. I felt no satisfaction, just emptiness. He'd stolen my childhood, my mobility, my trust. Prison time couldn't restore those losses. The group home smelled like industrial cleaner and overcooked vegetables. I hobbled through the entrance on hospital crutches, my assigned social worker carrying my single bag of possessions. The other residents watched from doorways as staff showed me to a shared room with 2 beds and a small dresser. My roommate, a skinny kid with nervous eyes, scooted his belongings further to his side when I entered. The social worker explained house rules while I tested the mattress, finding it only slightly better than the shelter cot. Lights out at 10, wake up at 6, chores on rotation. Structure meant safety here. Physical therapy started immediately. The therapist, a no-nonsense woman who'd seen worse cases, pushed me through exercises that left my arms trembling. Building upper body strength became crucial without a prosthetic. She taught me proper crutch techniques, ways to navigate stairs, how to protect my residual limb from further damage. Benji kept his promise about the prosthetic. He connected me with a non-profit that provided devices for youth in foster care. The fitting process took weeks, multiple appointments to get measurements right. The new leg felt foreign after going without for so long. I had to relearn walking from scratch. School enrollment came next. The group home partnered with a local high school that accepted mid-year transfers. I'd missed months of education, putting me behind in every subject. The guidance counselor arranged tutoring sessions, modified schedules, accommodations for my mobility challenges. Catching up seemed impossible impossible, but the alternative was aging out of foster care with no diploma. Dad's lawyer filed appeals, trying to reduce his sentence. Each legal update triggered nightmares about the attic, the reinforced locks, the steel mesh over the grate. The group home's thin walls meant everyone heard my night terrors. My roommate started sleeping in the common room to avoid my 3 a.m. wake-ups. I found unexpected allies among the other residents. Marcus, who'd been in the system since age 10, taught me which staff members bent rules and which ones reported everything. Sarah bounced between 12 placements, showed me how to hide valuables and navigate group home politics. We formed loose friendships based on shared survival rather than genuine connection. The prosthetic required constant adjustments as I regained muscle mass. Benji's brother volunteered his services, fine-tuning the fit every few weeks. Each modification brought less pain, more stability. I practiced walking the group home's long hallways after lights out, building endurance in secret. Court-mandated therapy sessions felt like another form of imprisonment. The therapist, young and earnest, wanted me to process trauma I wasn't ready to examine. I gave her enough participation to satisfy requirements while keeping the deepest wounds private. Some things couldn't be fixed with worksheets and breathing exercises. My first attempt at a part-time job ended badly. The grocery store manager took one look at my crutches during a prosthetic adjustment period and suddenly remembered they'd already filled the position. The second place, a movie theater, hired me for weekend shifts, but let me go after I couldn't keep pace during a busy Saturday. Each rejection reinforced my father's words about being worthless without his help. 6 months into group home life, I discovered the public library's computer lab stayed open until 9. It became my escape, a place to research prosthetic technology, apply for better jobs, plan for aging out of the system. The librarians grew used to my presence, occasionally bringing me leftover sandwiches from their staff meetings. Dad's first parole hearing approached faster than expected. The victim advocate assigned to my case prepared me for the possibility he might get early release. Good behavior, overcrowded prisons, first-time offender for the trafficking charges. The system that had failed to protect me might fail again to contain him. I testified at the hearing through video link, describing the years of abuse, the substance smuggling, the imprisonment. Dad sat in orange jumpsuit, playing reformed and remorseful. His lawyer emphasized his addiction issues, painting him as a victim of circumstances who'd lost his way after his wife's death. The parole board asked few questions. They denied his release, but only barely. The advocate warned he'd likely succeed at the next hearing in 18 months. I had that long to become truly independent, to build a life he couldn't destroy if he came looking. The countdown began. School became my focus. I pushed through advanced classes, summer sessions, online courses. The guidance counselor helped me apply for scholarships specifically for foster youth and disabled students. College meant housing, meal plans, distance from Dad's release. It meant a future beyond group home restrictions. My 18th birthday arrived with little fanfare. The group home provided a grocery store cake and awkward singing from staff, but it marked a critical transition. I could sign my own documents, make medical decisions, leave the foster system if I chose. I stayed, knowing the alternative was homelessness with an incomplete education. The acceptance letter came on a Tuesday. State University, full scholarship for former foster youth, accessible dormitories. I read it 3 times before believing it was real. The other residents congratulated me with genuine enthusiasm. Success stories were rare in our world. Preparing for college meant acquiring things I'd never owned. Benji organized a donation drive through his prosthetics network, collecting clothes, school supplies, a laptop. The group home staff helped with paperwork, financial aid forms, disability services registration. Each step moved me further from Dad's shadow. My final months in the group home passed quickly. I trained a younger resident to navigate the computer lab's job sites. Marcus aged out and disappeared, following the pattern of so many before him. Sarah got placed with a relative she'd never met, her 13th move. I focused on my approaching escape. The detective called 2 weeks before move-in day. Dad's second parole hearing had been scheduled. This time, his lawyer had assembled character witnesses, employment promises, a halfway house placement. The system was preparing to release him. She suggested I consider a restraining order, campus security alerts, safety planning. I packed my donated belongings into borrowed suitcases. The group home van would drive me to campus, my first time leaving the county since arriving at the shelter. Everything I owned fit in 2 bags and a backpack. The prosthetic Benji had helped provide was my most valuable possession. Police showing up to find a kid with scissors and blood while Dad spins tales about mental health issues. That's some real-time karma catching up faster than Dad can craft his cover story. Move-in day arrived with typical August heat. The group home van dropped me at the dormitory entrance, the driver wishing me luck before pulling away. I stood among families unloading cars, parents fussing over their children, and felt the isolation sharply. But I'd survived worse than being alone. My roommate had already claimed his side, expensive electronics and designer clothes marking territory. He glanced at my prosthetic, then away, mumbling introductions before leaving to meet friends. I unpacked slowly, stretching possessions to fill the empty spaces. Orientation week introduced me to campus resources. The Disability Services Office provided priority registration, extended test time, accessible routes between buildings. I memorized paths that avoided stairs, located elevators in each building, planned for winter when ice would make walking treacherous. Classes started with the usual syllabus reviews and icebreakers. I chose back row seats, easy bathroom access, minimal attention. The coursework felt manageable after pushing through high school compressed into 2 years. I established routines, library after dinner, laundry on Sundays, grocery runs when the shuttle ran. The first call came 6 weeks into the semester. Unknown number, but I recognized the breathing pattern before he spoke. Dad had made parole, wanted to reconcile, claimed he'd changed. I hung up and reported it to campus security. They increased patrols near my dorm, added my name to watch lists. He called from different numbers daily. immediately. I stopped answering unknown calls, let everything go to voicemail. The messages progressed from apologetic to angry to threatening. Campus security suggested changing my number, but I wanted evidence if he escalated. The restraining order paperwork sat on my desk, waiting. Benji texted one evening with concerning news. Dad had visited the prosthetic shop, asking about my new leg specifications. His brother had refused information, but Dad knew where to look now. I started varying my routes, checking behind me, carrying pepper spray despite campus rules. The first package arrived at my dorm mailbox. No return address, but I recognized his handwriting. Inside, photos from my childhood, before the accident, when Mom was alive, when he still pretended to love us both. The message was clear. He remembered when I needed him. I gave everything to campus police. They documented it, suggested I file for the restraining order, offered escort services between classes, but they couldn't stop him from existing in the same world, from knowing where I was, from having 18 years of control branded into my psyche. More packages followed. Newspaper clippings about the accident that culled Mom, medical records from my amputation, photos of the attic with new locks installed. Each delivery reminded me that he'd kept evidence of everything, ammunition for future manipulation. My grades started slipping. Sleep became elusive, waiting for him to appear on campus. I caught myself checking for his truck in every parking lot, scanning crowds for his face. The freedom I'd fought for felt fragile, temporary, dependent on his willingness to stay away. The breaking point came during midterms. I returned from an exam to find my dorm room door slightly open. Nothing missing, but things had been moved. My prosthetic supplies reorganized. A note on my pillow. You still need me. Security reviewed footage but found nothing conclusive. I filed the restraining order that afternoon. The judge granted temporary protection based on evidence collected. Dad would be served papers, ordered to stay away, threatened with returning to prison if he violated terms. But paper shields only worked if he cared about consequences. 2 days later, Benji called with an offer. His brother was expanding the prosthetic shop, needed part-time help with insurance paperwork and patient intake. The pay was modest, but included prosthetic maintenance and adjustments. More importantly, it was across town from campus, a place Dad wouldn't think to look. I accepted immediately. The job meant independence beyond scholarship stipends. It meant connections in the prosthetics community, people who understood disability beyond sympathy. It meant building a life Dad couldn't infiltrate. Working at the shop taught me about more than insurance forms. I met amputees of all ages, heard their stories, learned that survival took many forms. The technicians showed me basic repairs, let me assist with fittings, treated me as capable rather than damaged. Winter arrived with complications I hadn't anticipated. Ice made every surface treacherous. The prosthetic slipped constantly, forcing me to use crutches more often. Dad's calls had stopped after the restraining order, but silence felt more ominous than threats. Finals week brought unexpected relief. A letter from the prosecutor. Dad had violated parole by contacting me. The restraining order breach meant automatic return to prison. He'd been arrested at a motel 2 towns over, planning something the letter didn't specify. 5 more years added to his sentence. I read it 3 times, waiting to feel something. Relief, anger, vindication. Instead, just emptiness. He'd stolen so much that even his capture felt hollow. But it meant time. 5 years to build a life he couldn't touch, to become someone beyond his victim. Spring semester started with renewed focus. My grades recovered. The prosthetics shop increased my hours. I declared a major in biomedical engineering, drawn to designing better mobility devices. Each small success built foundations for a future I was only beginning to imagine. The anniversary of my escape passed quietly. 1 year since the attic, the scissors, the blood messages that finally brought help. I marked it by walking across campus without crutches, my gait steady on the prosthetic Benji had helped provide. Each step proved Dad wrong. I didn't need him. Summer brought internship offers from medical device companies. The shop owner wrote recommendations emphasizing my unique perspective as both user and aspiring designer. I accepted a position 3 states away, far from Dad's prison, far from memories embedded in familiar streets. My dorm room emptied as quickly as it had filled. The same donated suitcases now held accumulated textbooks, work clothes, evidence of a life built from nothing. My roommate had never warmed to me, but nodded respectfully as I left. Survival earned its own recognition. The bus to my internship city departed at dawn. I chose a window seat, watched campus disappear behind morning fog. My phone stayed silent. I'd finally changed the number, cutting the last thread Dad might pull. The prosthetic pressed against the seat ahead, a minor discomfort I'd learned to manage. 8 weeks of designing, testing, learning from engineers who saw potential rather than limitation. The internship supervisor mentioned full-time positions after graduation, career paths I'd never imagined possible. Each day proved that Dad's version of my worth had always been a lie. I returned to campus changed, not healed. Some wounds went too deep for that, but functional, directed, building something from the wreckage he'd created. The prosthetics shop welcomed me back with increased responsibilities, classes challenged in productive ways, life developed rhythm beyond mere survival. Second year began with confidence earned through experience. I mentored freshmen with disabilities, sharing navigation tips and resource locations. The engineering coursework intensified, but I'd learned to seek help before drowning. Each semester added skills, connections, possibilities. Dad would serve at least 4 more years. By then, I'd have graduated, started a career, built a life he couldn't recognize or infiltrate. The boy he'd trapped in the attic was gone, replaced by someone who understood that survival meant more than escape. It meant creating something worth protecting. My prosthetic needed replacing after 2 years of constant use. Insurance covered basic models, but I'd saved enough for advanced features. The fitting felt different this time. I asked technical questions, understood the mechanics, suggested modifications based on experience. The technicians treated me as a colleague rather than just a patient. Junior year brought specialized courses in prosthetic design. My professor, himself an amputee amputee, pushed me toward innovation rather than acceptance of current limitations. We discussed neural interfaces, advanced materials, customization possibilities. Each lecture expanded my vision of what mobility could mean. The shop owner offered partnership after graduation, building the business, focusing on pediatric prosthetics, ensuring no child faced the isolation I'd known. It meant staying in the college town, establishing roots, creating the stability Dad had always denied me. I accepted without hesitation. The future solidified into achievable goals: finish degree, develop new designs, help others navigate loss and adaptation. Simple plans that required only my own effort to achieve. Dad had taught me to expect abandonment, but I'd learned to build foundations that couldn't be unscrewed and hidden away. Thanks for letting me wonder through all of this with you. Definitely made for an interesting ride. Until we meet again. Like the video, it helps more than you think.